I love excited Anitka. That's actually one of my favorite things in the world.
Okay, so let's start. Cześć everyone, my name is Anita Ulikowska.
And my name is Ania Siemiączko, and we are your local foreigners.
And welcome back. We haven't been here for such a long time. And you might guess that it's because the infamous COVID-19, which actually caused us to be separated between the two countries, Poland and the UK. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about our stories. But for now, we just wanted to welcome you back to our podcast. And for the first time, you will be able to see our podcast because we are recording a video as well. So if you want to, you can head to our YouTube channel and watch our conversation as well. So if you are watching this, you might see that we are super excited to be recording it.
No, it's all very different, very exciting and new.
There's so many different topics that we want to talk about. But because we are in this very special situation, we debated whether we should talk about COVID-19 or not. And in the end, we decided that it would feel very strange if we completely ignored what is happening.
The global pandemic.
Right? Because it's affecting all of us. And especially because we are now separated between two countries because of the pandemic. We thought, well, it's impossible not to talk about COVID-19. So in today's...
Our good old friend, COVID-19.
Yeah. So today we want to just talk about it and dive into what life is like during the pandemic in the UK and in Poland. And obviously we are going to be presenting just our own personal experience. So by no means are we going to be talking, presenting an overview of the situation in Poland or in the UK, because I personally feel like every single person on this planet is going to be having a very, very different experience and story from what is happening.
Definitely. But I also think that we both have this kind of unique experience of being in two countries simultaneously in a way. And you being in the UK, experiencing that as a Polish immigrant, and then me being a Polish immigrant now back in Poland, but still very much in touch with everything that's happening in the UK and very much caring about what's happening and kind of observing it closely. And I think it's going to be interesting to see our different perspectives on that as well, from a foreign perspective.
I think it's going to be really interesting to start with what actually happened after.
How did we get separated?
Exactly, what separated us and how we ended up being in two different countries. So we should start.
My story is more dramatic, isn't it? Because I actually got stuck and the borders shut down on me.
Exactly.
And I can't leave.
Let's go back to beginning of March, because I think this is when we both left the UK for some time. And whilst I came back, you didn't. Let's go back a month ago and tell us what happened.
So I was traveling to Poland for a gig of my friend. I was traveling to Warsaw, and the plan was to kind of just stay over the weekend and come back the Monday after. And then I had another appointment in Krakow, I think on Tuesday, so I extended my stay. My fiancé went back to London on Monday morning, and I kind of just stayed. And I figured I didn't really have specific plans, so it's quite telling that something was just dragging me away from flying back, because I still tried to get back to the UK as soon as possible. And at the very last minute, without booking any flights, I thought, well, actually, I'm so close to home, I could just visit my parents and stay for 3 more days and then come back on the weekend, because, I'm practically there. I'm just a few hours away. So I decided to do that, and I took a bus home. And between Tuesday night, that's when I got home, and Saturday, the situation in Poland was changing daily. So I'm curious to hear your side of the story if things were as dramatic in the UK. But in Poland, it was like watching a thriller. The twist, the cliffhanger at the end of each day, I'm not even exaggerating, each day we had new restrictions and new decisions. And whereas on Sunday I was still having fun at the gig in the capital with over 1,000 people present, by Saturday the borders were shut. We couldn't congregate in over like 5 people, I think, by that point, because the number was kind of lowered down from 500 to 100 to whatever. And my flight got cancelled, and we were not allowed to leave the house, etc. All the restrictions kind of got introduced, but the gist of it, I was not stranded because I'm home and I'm fine. I'm with my parents, but at that point, I knew I wouldn't be coming back to the UK anytime soon, and it's sort of continues, and it's been a month, weirdly. It's kind of flown by, but here we are still, very much apart in different countries.
So my side of the story was at the beginning of March. I was traveling to I was abroad on a holiday, and still then everything seemed pretty much normal. I mean, like, we knew that the pandemic is I think at the time it was still called an epidemic, and it was spreading, but it still felt like it wasn't something that was concerning us personally, because it felt so far away. The main hubs were in the Asian countries, and then also the situation started getting a lot more serious in Italy, but it still felt far away enough to feel safe. So we boarded our flight as normal. Nobody was wearing any masks, and we flew without any disruptions. We flew back around, I think it was on the 10th of March, we came back. And when we flew back, everything still was normal. And I knew that there were already cases of COVID-19 in the UK, and the numbers were quite high. I mean, nothing like the situation in Italy, but for example, a lot higher than in Poland and some other countries in Central Europe. So I was like, okay, this is strange, because I'm seeing in the news that the reactions of other governments when the numbers are much lower are very visible, whereas in the UK everything is normal. The turning point was for me, I remember, on the 12th of March. So that was a couple of days after I came back from my holiday. On that day, I just randomly I got an opportunity to go to a big conference in London.
Oh yes, I called you then.
Remember, exactly. And I was like, oh my God, I really want to go. This is such a great opportunity. I really need this. I really want this. But on the other hand, I was like, well, but what about the epidemic? But on the other hand, well, I'm running out of hands now, but on the third hand, the government, like the British government is not giving any advice. So I thought, okay, maybe it is still safe to go. But I was really hesitant to go.
I remember being so terrified for you, because it was so interesting to watch you and the UK kind of go about the normal day-to-day life, and you were there on the public transport. So I had you on the public transport, like going to some conference. At the same time, I had friends who abandoned all public transport and literally locked themselves in on the 12th of March already. No one would even think about jumping on a bus or a train. And I even had my parents' friends who were trying to get their daughter back home from the place she was studying in, and that friend was freaking out about the fact that her daughter might be taking public transport. So she decided to drive there with her husband and pick her up. Gosh. No one was using public transport. So imagine my shock then to talk to you on the way to the conference, and I could hear all the people on the overground, and kind of just everything sort of happening as normal in London. And it was a shock. I remember it being a shock.
Yeah, and I remember being so confused because I'm getting this information from Poland. The situation is really serious. There's like six cases, I think that was at the time, or like less than 10. I'm lying. I think it was around. Was it around 60 or was it 6? But like the number of cases in Poland was a fraction compared to the numbers in the UK. So Poland's like, shut the borders, no one leaves home, don't go to work. And I'm on the way to conference, and I'm sat, and I remember that I was sitting on the overground, and there was a gentleman sitting in front of me, and he coughed at me. Like, no, he did not even cover his face. I was like,
oh wow, okay, that's like the last thing.
Yeah, that was like the last straw for me. And also I had you on the phone, and at that point how I decided I'm going back. So on the way to conference, I was already halfway there. I decided to turn around after speaking to you and that guy coughing at me, and went back home. And
saved your life, basically. I need to remember that.
Possibly, yeah, possibly, exactly. Not the first time though. Yeah, so I went back, and that night we had a conversation with my boyfriend, and we decided that we are leaving London. So we were lucky enough to have another place to go to away from London, and we decided to come here, not knowing that we would, as dramatic as this sounds, would not be coming back. So we actually, after a week of staying away from London, we had to end our contract our renting contract in London, and go back and essentially move out during the pandemic situation, which by that time, the situation in Britain became a lot more serious, and social distancing when it was introduced, and later on a lockdown as well. So within a couple of weeks, literally our lives changed dramatically.
It was incredible. It's one of the best pandemic stories I've heard personally from friends. Changing your life without previously planning to, sort of on the spot, and just making really big life decisions, kind of spurred by that situation. And it's, I think it's just such an exciting change. In your case, it's not like a negative change. It's a huge change, but it's kind of just like a new chapter. And I actually wonder, and I would love to hear from people about, kind of positive changes that the pandemic caused. And it's not really, I don't want to kind of be happy-go-lucky, positive, yay, COVID, at this stage, because obviously it's a huge tragedy for so many people. But it'd be interesting to see and hear about decisions and changes that the pandemic caused in our lives, and kind of maybe preemptive changes, because obviously the changes will happen post this whole thing, but I think a lot of them are happening now to our lives, and it's also just very exciting.
I also feel very strange using like very positive language around the situation, because I understand that for so many people, like you said, it's just a tragedy, or simply a very difficult time if you're, for example, one of the key workers. I understand that, but at the same time, we must acknowledge that there are some positive outcomes of what is happening. And just before this conversation, I was speaking with my friend who lives in London, and she actually said that she could not be diagnosed with a test, but she was advised by doctors over the phone that most likely she's got a COVID-19. So she's had to self-isolate, and she's been having really, physically, in terms of her health, hard time over the past 2 weeks. But she said that I've been gifted time. It's a difficult time from the health perspective, but I have the gift of time, and I'm reading like crazy. I'm catching up on all the things that I wanted to do for so long. I am really focusing on myself and how to get the most out of this situation for myself. So whilst it's a terrible situation, there is always that the other side. So you're right. Like, I would also love to hear other people's stories of, in general, like what has been the main shift in their life. Maybe positive, maybe negative, maybe neutral. But I'm sure that we are all collectively going through a massive shift, whether we want it or not, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So ever since you came to your home in Poland, what has life been like for you?
In short, actually, it's kind of like being back in 2008 for me. Like, I just moved back in time, and it's a kind of blissful sort of existence. I think I've been extremely blessed with the fact that I haven't got any key workers in my family or amongst friends. So I'm not worried sick every day about them, because I think I would be definitely that person. And it's been sort of, I've been taken care of. I don't have to worry about anything, because I'm with my parents and my brother's here as well, because he's working remotely. I'm working from home, and my work is I've worked from home in the past as well, or had the option to. So it doesn't feel as dramatic of a change, I guess, in that sense, or I haven't been disadvantaged in any way. Quite contrary, I think my life has become much more comfortable, because I'm just in the comfort of a bigger home rather than my London flat, kind of just with my family and being taken care of, and being able to work and have that time, as you said, for all this stuff, because I haven't got distractions, and so I just spend that time on me doing things I love doing that I usually haven't got time for. So it's a strange sort of blissful day-to-day existence of just getting my introvert out that's been hiding there all along, and reading and watching things and writing, and it's been quite good, actually. And please don't hate me, because I sound like such a twat, I guess, in a way, because I hate to be that sort of person, because I can only imagine what the families who have key workers, their families, going through. And so many people have been furloughed, the new English word for all of us. Well, for me, certainly. I'd never heard of it before.
I had to look it up.
So it's really tough times for so many people, and I kind of don't really want to wave the flag of happiness around and this is great. But I guess I've been very fortunate and very privileged to do what I love doing with, and have people around me that I love, and I'm in touch with other people that I love. And I guess maybe what I can say here is that we who are this privileged and fortunate, I think, can do the bare minimum, and that is staying home, not getting in the way, and helping if we still have jobs, donating money. If we can do things like make masks, let's make masks, or all that stuff. Or if we don't have the ability to do anything practical, like myself, maybe just donate money or spread the word. And I think there's a lot we can still do, and I think that's important to remember that as well, and not go out.
Actually, so what's the situation like when it comes to going out? Because in the UK, we still have the ability to go outside for 1 hour a day to do one form of exercise, only with the members of your household. Like, this is drilled into my mind right now. I feel like this is still a privilege, because I think when I was having a conversation with my brother who lives in Poland with his family, he said that whilst at the beginning of the pandemic, they could still go to the forest with the kids. Now they can't do that. So what is it like?
Well, the situation in Poland is I think the restrictions are much harsher. But I guess in a way they make sense, because I remember hearing about the British restrictions, and I remember thinking, but how are you going to implement that? So you obviously put a lot of trust in people. And I think that it's actually really interesting to see how the government interacts with the people in Britain and in Poland, or maybe in generally like post-Soviet countries, because a lot of trust is put in people. So I think government trusts people to do an exercise a day. So in Poland it's very much different. It's kind of, you cannot go out and you can't be checked on the street. So you can only go to get food, and within reason. So I think there was someone caught driving from Warsaw to somewhere else and claiming that they were going shopping, and they still got fined, because that was kind of just like, are you seriously going shopping outside of your city? You have to either go shopping, or you go into pharmacy, a doctor, or maybe assist your elderly family members or whoever that needs help. And you have to have that reason. You can walk a dog, and that's the only walk that's allowed. I think the general rules that you can kind of go kind of refresh yourself outside for a brisk walk, but you can't do any sports. So sports is generally not allowed. So jogging, riding a bike, you will get fined for it. I guess it kind of makes it easier to implement, but obviously it must be absolutely terrible for anyone without a garden or any kind of, well, a garden actually, because then even like public gardens are shut and parks are shut and playgrounds, all of that. So yeah, how many people are like jogging and walking and kind of getting about right now, do you think?
It's very hard to say because it depends on the time of the day. I tend to go out either very late at night or very early in the morning. So when I sometimes go for a jog around the park around 8 a.m., you can see people, but not very many people. Whereas at night, it's totally empty. But also, I'm talking about like a small city in the UK. It's not London. Actually, on that, in terms of London, when we did have to go back to pick up all our stuff from our old flat in London, I remember having to go to the pharmacy around 5 a.m. I think 5:30 p.m. in the afternoon. So typical rush hour in London that time. And it was also middle of the week. And I was walking past a little exchange hub in West Hampstead. So there is Thameslink, overground and underground, all within a very short walk. So normally around that time of the day, it's packed with people. Honestly, there's cars, people everywhere. I was walking there was only a few people. But the interesting thing is that when I went to the pharmacy, I said to my pharmacist that it's such an eerie atmosphere because there's no one there. And she said, you wouldn't believe, in the morning, it was so packed with people that it felt like as if COVID-19 was not happening. So
wow, okay,
yeah, so it's just another testament to the fact that everyone is going to have a very different experience of what is happening. There's no objective view of the situation because we will all have our subjective views and experiences. But when it comes to that rule around exercising once per day, like I said, in the evenings it's very quiet here. But I do sometimes see people breaking the rules. Sometimes you do see teenagers, for example. I have seen a few groups on a few different occasions.
That's another thing, actually, in Poland, which is actually, I think, one of the stricter ones, because that's what they really wanted to stamp down on, is our kids just roaming the streets and stuff. So now, if you're under 18, you cannot leave the house without an adult.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I think was one of the strictest measures here. So no kids are allowed outside unless supervised. So I guess that prevents, or any group of kids can be stopped on the streets and kind of asked to, by the parents. And the fines are actually pretty high as well. And that's another difference that I've noticed between the UK and Poland. Like here, I think you can be fined 500 zloty, which is £100, but obviously in kind of more accurate conversion, it's much higher than a value of £100 to someone. So maybe equivalent, we can just say £500. Yeah. As in how you feel the lack of 500 zloty, it's a lot of money. But also, if you break a quarantine, say you feel like you're ill, but you're not very ill, or you sort of, maybe you're waiting for your test results, you're quarantined, and you want to leave for to get groceries, and you can't do that. So you absolutely cannot leave your house if you're in official quarantine. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, you can be fined up to 30,000 zloty. That's £6,000. Wow. Because they kind of really stamped anyone who has COVID needs to stay in and just kind of report it, and they will, do shopping for you. But for 14 days that you can't leave the house for. So when I heard about the fine, I think it's £30 in the UK, isn't it? You can be fined if you break the rules. Yeah. I'm not entirely sure if that's not if there's more fines in existence as a regulation, let us know. But I think I've heard about £30 fine, and that's not a lot, is it, for a majority of British people?
Not at all. And the funny thing is that actually just after they introduced that restriction, I remember going for a walk, and I was walking around the park, and I actually stopped because I was on the phone with my friend, and I stopped and I sat down for a moment, and I was sat there for a few minutes, and I saw a police car in the park. Like driving towards me. And I'm like, oh, like, it's really good that they are actually monitoring the situation, but I was just sat there, oblivious, like on my phone, having a bit of rest, and they drove towards me. Like they were driving for me. So I was like, oh my God. And I got scared because I thought maybe I was doing something wrong. And, they said to me, like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm getting my exercise, 1 hour per day. And they
on
said,
the bench.
Yes, why are you not exercising? Why are you not moving? I was like, oh my God, of course.
Classic.
Right. But I was like, no, I actually said, thank you for letting me know, because I don't want to be a risk to anyone. And you're probably not a risk, but it's just about what example you're setting for others. And I was like, yes, I'm on it. I'm with you. I'm moving my ass off the grass, and I'm going. So I was really glad that they checked, but obviously they were like very polite in their approach. They gave me a kind of like a warning, like, just move your ass. But and I do see whenever
you could have just been there. That's like maybe like moving your leg up and down, or like just doing this. And then would that count towards your daily exercise on the bench? Just bench exercise or grass. Like suddenly, just like you could have just done like a downward dog, like, sat on the grass.
But yeah, so you can see that most people are adhering to, at least in my experience, most people are adhering to the restrictions, with the exception of, again, in my experience, a few groups of teenagers.
Yes. Mm.
And another interesting thing is that at the beginning, when social distancing was introduced, I think most people, well, including myself, didn't really know how, like, what are we meant to be doing actually with the social distancing, like when you queue in the shop, are you meant to be keeping distance, or like how much is actually the distance? So whilst at the beginning, everybody seemed to really just carry on as normal and just try, obviously, not to like shake anyone's hands, and just, like the very basic precautions were being kept. Now, when you walk on the sidewalk, people would actually maneuver around you and really like even cross the streets, or they would stop so you can pass if the sidewalk is very narrow. So it's totally different situation from what it was a couple of weeks ago. Also, every shop is introducing their own rules of managing crowds. So sometimes you would just have a line by which you have to stand, or recently, last time when I was shopping, you couldn't even walk up to the till, but you had to queue in a long queue of people, and then you were just being called out to, like till number 3, till number 4, till number 8, and you just go one by one. And when you stand in the queue, you also keep the distance between the people. Yeah. So again, like, people are adapting very quickly here, and they are adhering to the new regulations.
Yeah, it's kind of become just the new norm, I feel like.
Right.
I guess maybe because it's also been over a month of this being the case in Poland. So it's kind of just, it kind of feels normal in a weird way. But it's just, what we need to do. Actually, tomorrow we all have to wear masks in public. That's compulsory, everyone. So that's also like going to change the visual phase of pandemic, literally. And, we will see it everywhere. And even if it feels calmer and okay and not so threatening, I guess, like in Poland's situation, is not dramatic. It's not, obviously nowhere is great, but not terrible. but having everyone wear masks, I think it will just also create that awareness of this is what we're dealing with. That's what we need to do.
Where do you buy the masks from, and do you have to buy it on your own, or are you provided with a mask by the government?
No, you have to have your own mask. I think everyone's had a week to get them, but they're not actually. Well, actually, I can't obviously speak for the whole country, but in my town, there's just been plenty of masks. So kind of lots of, yes, people kind of even in markets and individual sellers just started selling masks, which maybe they made on their own, because basically you can't kind of you have to cover your face and nose. So whatever you do, you can wear a scarf if you want to, but you have to just cover it. So it doesn't have to be like a medical mask or anything. It just has to be a mask. And all shops pretty much sell masks now. And there's no shortage of masks, as in like just regular, masks in this part of the country. And they're quite cheap as well.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to chat on the phenomenon, like more like British phenomena, and kind of the British, because maybe actually the British don't see it as well themselves, because it's probably hard to maybe see a national trait as different once you're in your own country, or in your own country. I hate that I said that, but in your country. And the whole phenomenon of NHS volunteering, which has been exceptional, I think, worldwide, the British public that kind of just rushed to help. And I kind of want to say, especially in light of what I've seen in Poland, which we haven't done this, and there hasn't been a call out for any volunteers. And there's been one event of clapping, because as part of and they showed it on TV later that day. They didn't really tell anyone, so we were not aware we were supposed to clap at some point during the day. Mm-hmm. And the montage sequence on TV on the news was hilarious, because it literally showed 3 blocks of flats clapping. So I don't know whether they just arranged those people to clap, like in the one district of Warsaw, they just clapped and they filmed it. Maybe we all felt jealous of the UK spirit, but it was incredible to hear what's happening, that kind of real solidarity amongst the Brits, who are so. We're British as well. We are British as much as we are Polish, and we are part of Britain. And Britain's such a hugely multicultural, multinational nation and country, and you'd think it'd be more difficult to unite people in that way, and yet it was completely the contrary. So please report back, reporter in the UK.
I had my first clap last week. I knew about it. I think it was the third time, either the second or the third time in a row. So they happen on Thursdays at 8 p.m. It was actually started by, from what I was reading, by a Dutch person in London. I love this. We need to. Okay, say it again, because we all need to remember that a foreign Dutch person in London started the clapping. Started the clap.
Prove this whole point of our podcasting, really.
Yeah, exactly. And it was because I think the similar tribute was paid to the Dutch version of NHS. I think it was a girl. She thought that it was a beautiful thing, and she managed to start that in the UK, and it got picked up very quickly. And I think the Brits are really good at that. Like they are the Brits, like you said, the multicultural society in the UK is very good at picking such things up and just uniting in this like very emotional way. And I do feel that the Brits are really proud of the NHS. They do, they do talk, they do complain about it. Everybody complains about it. But I think like the prevailing feeling especially among Brits, is pride in NHS. So I'm not surprised that they are paying that tribute to the key workers and particularly the medical staff. Whilst I didn't know about the first and second clap, and I thought actually that the second clap didn't happen in our street, but apparently it did. And the one last week, we went outside and it was so emotional. Everybody, most people in the street were out and they were clapping, and it just really felt like we're all in this together. And also after the clap, some people stayed and they chatted, between the neighbors, keeping the social distance, and it felt really nice. And I also heard that in some neighborhoods people meet up for like coffee in the morning, but they just walk out in like a little neighborhood. They just stay on their porch.
Yeah, someone was having a party as well in that way.
Yeah, it's like
DJ down the street,
but not together. It's like being together but not together, which is also really, really nice. And
it's amazing, isn't it? And actually that kind of communal British spirit, sorry to kind of just butt you in, because it's not, I think in Poland we're much more insulated in our own homes. I think we're very much like we're in our home kind of people. And, the community in Poland is very different. I think it's more on the serious side. When there's a threat and enemy, we unite. And we're very serious about a lot of things and dramatic, as with the pandemic as well. Yeah. But we haven't got that sort of, we're just throwing a street party thing. Mm-hmm. It never happens. And yet in Britain, there's a different sort of more just like fun side to the community. And then as a very, very important, if not the most important side, to kind of, we're going to keep the, spirit up. And even the media reporting, which I'd actually like to just touch upon later, but that expression in a good spirit, that would never, no one even would comment on your mood in, like say if our prime minister was sick, it would not be an expression to use. And I think it's all tied in together culturally and linguistically in a sense as well. And it's brilliantly seen in initiatives like that all over the country.
Yeah. I really appreciate this about the British culture. And another thing, so on the topic of NHS and the support for it, like you mentioned, the volunteer response was incredible. First of all, I'm so impressed with NHS for creating a platform literally within days. There was a platform, a collaboration between NHS and I think either the Samaritans or another organization, but like another volunteer organization. As a result of their collab, they created this platform where you essentially have an app and you can register as a volunteer supporter for NHS, and you can select the activities that you want to be providing support for, and you just do everything through the app. Incredible. And also the response was so big that they actually had to pause recruitment. So I found out about it too late. At the time when I wanted to apply for volunteering, they already had paused recruitment. So I actually had to go to my local pharmacy, and I just went and I asked, how can I help, because I live locally, so I can pick up prescription and if you need any help. And they said there is this organization that is also creating volunteering opportunities, so get in touch with them. So I actually had to go out of my way to find another way to volunteer because the response was so big.
Yeah, it was incredible. Another friend of mine also tried to volunteer, and she kind of just couldn't because they kind of just ran out of places, which was incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right? Exactly. So many people wanted to help. And I also have to mention here my landlord, well, ex-landlord now, Chris, who take holiday from his normal paid job so that he can volunteer his time at Nightingale. So there are people like that as well. I feel lucky to be in the UK, even though the response of the government was quite late compared to other countries. I do feel like we really are in this together, and collectively we are acting quite responsibly, and we are now very aware of the full gravity of the situation. And, you know, like the tribute for the NHS and the appreciation for the key workers is very important, and that's keeping the spirits up, like we were talking before as well. So yeah, I just feel very grateful to be here and to be in a relatively safe place as well. I also had a reflection recently that this situation is showing how, in a way, like, do we even belong to any country? You know, like I feel like the pandemic is really showing us that we are a planet, you know, one big planet, and we have these, you know, these carefully constructed countries and rules and cultures and divisions. But really, right now, there are so many people who are really feeling that, you know, like you don't belong to only one country, or that whilst before you were considering yourself a citizen of a country, now you might be stranded in another country, because there are cases like that, and all of a sudden you become an immigrant, you know, even without your own will. So it's really interesting on that, you know, like almost like philosophical level, to see what is happening to our identities, and are we really citizens of one country, or are we starting to feel a lot more cosmopolitan? Are we starting to feel a lot more connected? Are we feeling like maybe whilst before we felt that, you know, it's us and them, us, the citizens of nationals of a country and immigrants, now we're all working together to tackle this situation? So are we starting to see ourselves in a slightly different light?
Yeah, and it's just a situation where we're all in the same boat all over the world, no matter what country we currently live in or what national identity we kind of say we belong to. I think, I mean, to me, it never mattered, and that's my life's work will always be to sort of dilute the national differences, because I never thought they mattered in any way. Apart from maybe they're just, they're fascinating, the cultural differences and how we kind of navigate our lives around cultures and languages. And that's super interesting. But in that sense, as you're saying, it sort of doesn't matter. And I think the pandemic really shows that it doesn't matter, because we're all in the same boat, and we can't win this in a single country. You know, unless we completely just shut our borders forever and then just produce everything. We're all a codependent planet, and we're all citizens of our planet that we need to take care of. And that's literally the only thing that matters now. And kind of united, we can only win. And I know it's such a lofty thing to say, but it's really true that we kind of need to cooperate, because we're all experiencing the exact same fears, emotions. I think whoever's listening in general, I think on a more existential level, we all experiencing the same fears right now, the same hope, the same changes. And that's probably never ever happened before, because even when you think about the wars affect different countries differently. And it's obviously in the Western world now, everything's kind of this situation is being referred to as like first time since the Second World War. But really, Second World War didn't affect everyone in the world. This is very, kind of Western centric views, plus maybe some other countries. But the pandemic now actually affects us all, like everywhere. And that's huge. That's never happened before. And I think, if anything, I hope we take a lesson from that and start being more together and more supportive of each other. I smiled a little seeing the headlines. Obviously, Boris Johnson took over the headlines in the UK, which was interesting in its own right to see, because Polish media kind of took an exactly opposite approach of big tragedy and numbers and facts, and just like, here we are reporting very seriously about this. And Britain's just like, oh, Boris Johnson's in a good spirit, great. But so it's fascinating to see that difference of what we communicate and what we want people to know. But one of the nurses was he's a Portuguese nurse who Boris Johnson thanked personally. And, and obviously, you have to sort of, not to get too political, but think back about the whole Brexit situation and the sort of address of Boris Johnson telling us that we shouldn't feel too comfortable in the UK or in general as immigrants. And, there was a lot of hostility as well as support. Obviously, it went side by side. And I think it was just so beautiful that one of the nurses was the EU citizen, was Portuguese. And so much of the NHS staff are from all over the place. And as is the UK, And I don't know, I think it must have meant something for everyone who's a European living in the UK and, also very much part of British culture.
Yeah, I think so. And I think this is a really beautiful point to finish this episode at, and just finish with that thoughts in our heads. What really matters? What's the most important thing in our lives, in our personal lives, but also collectively. And I think this is a really good time to reflect on that. We would love to find out from you guys how you are dealing with the situation, and again, what has been the major shift in your lives lately. So do let us know, and let's start a conversation about this, and let's start exchanging our immigrant stories, because we're all immigrants right now in a way, and support each other in this way, so
yeah, definitely.
If you would like to share a story, you can find us on Instagram at Your Local Foreigners, and you can also find us on YouTube and Your Local Foreigners channel, and you can comment below the video as well. And you can also find us on Stitcher and Spotify and Apple Podcasts and Podbean. Get in touch with us, and we are hoping that you are taking care of yourselves and that you are keeping as well as you can be right now, because it's a difficult situation for all of us. We're all experiencing change and a massive shift, but we will come out on the other side. And stay at home, wash your hands, and we will be
back.
You will be back. Exactly.
Than a month and a half. We've finally figured this out. So hopefully we can move on from COVID and we'll be back with our usual ramblings on foreign life in the UK. Memories of it.
Precisely. So we will keep entertaining you during this difficult time as well. So we will catch up with you in our next episode. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, guys.
Pa, Aneczko.
Pa, Anitko.
Pa, kochanie.